My name is Deborah. At 3:22 a.m., I sat in Denver airport with a ticket in hand, leaving behind the house where my mother-in-law was expecting me to cook dinner for 40 people. But this time I wasn't leaving a dinner. I was leaving to search for the truth about the man I called my husband, the man who might have been living another life behind my back. For years, I had turned myself into the perfect wife, carrying everything on my shoulders in exchange for a place in that family, only to realize I may never have truly been considered a member. Have you ever felt like nothing more than a tool in your own marriage? Share your thoughts in the comments, hit like and subscribe so you won't miss the next stories. And now, let me tell you the journey that changed my entire life. I still remember clearly the day I first stepped into that house, believing I had chosen the right path. He held my hand tightly and said, "From now on, this is our home." At that moment I believed him. Believed I had found a man who knew how to love, how to protect, and a family that would open their arms to welcome me. The first year I tried so hard I nearly forgot who I was. I learned how to cook the dishes his mother liked, from herb-roasted chicken to the pumpkin soup she always bragged was her family secret. I hosted weekend gatherings, set the table exactly as she requested, listened to every piece of feedback, even the cold criticisms. Once, when I placed a bouquet of carnations on the table, she curled her lip. "In this house, only lilies belong in the living room. You should remember that." I smiled, swallowed the sting, and told myself maybe I wasn't refined enough. I turned down an important promotion offer in Chicago to move to Colorado with him. When my old director asked if I was sure, I reassured with a smile, "Family is my priority right now." But deep inside, I knew I had traded away a lot. I once dreamed of having my own office, of running ad campaigns with my mark on them. Yet after one sentence from him, "I need you here by my side," I folded up every opportunity, believing sacrifice would buy lasting love. The following years, I became more and more of a model wife in everyone's eyes, while fading from my own life. I prepared every family birthday party, arranged every anniversary detail, always smiling when people arrived. I heard them praise him as a lucky man, praise the cozy house that was actually the result of my care for every corner. He stood there, smiling with pride, but never once turned to take my hand and say thank you. One Christmas evening after the guests left, I quietly washed the mountain of dishes piled in the sink. My hands burned from hot water, my back ached, while laughter still echoed from the living room. He walked in with a glass of wine, patted my shoulder lightly. "You're doing great. I'll get back to the guests." Then he turned and left me in the messy kitchen. Watching his back, I suddenly realized that in his eyes, I was the stagehand, not an equal partner. His mother always knew how to make me feel lacking. One day she told me, "Deborah, you should learn to take better care of the house. A woman who can't keep a kitchen can't keep a husband." I bit my lip, nodded while my chest twisted. I wanted to speak up, to say I wasn't a shadow behind them. But each time his eyes stopped me. That look seemed to say, "Don't make a scene. Everything you do is for this family." I thought maybe enduring a little would keep the peace. Until one day when I accidentally opened our online banking account to check a bill, I saw a strange entry. An account under his name, but one I had never known about. My heart pounded as I clicked. The balance was no small sum, tens of thousands of dollars, transferred out regularly each month. I asked him one evening over dinner. I carefully said, "Colton, I saw another bank account. Why have you never mentioned it?" He froze briefly, then gave a dry laugh. "Oh, it's a secondary account for investments. You don't need to worry about complicated things like that." The way he said it, so casual, made me tremble. I wasn't an outsider. I was his wife. Why would he hide it? I didn't press further, but that night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while my mind raced with questions. If it was investments, why keep it secret? If it was savings, why never share? I remembered the times I had to pinch pennies for household shopping while he always said, "We need to save." And yet now I knew he had an entire stash beyond my reach. Once I tried again. "Could you show me some of the investment papers? I work in marketing, I understand a bit about finance too." He slammed his glass down, his voice sharp. "Deborah, stay out of it. I know what I'm doing." I sat there, heart aching. Not because of the money, but because of the truth. I had no place in my husband's important decisions. I was shut out, as if this marriage was only a facade to cover something else. After that, I started paying closer attention. He had sudden business trips, late-night meetings that stretched past midnight. His phone always face down, locked with a password I didn't know. Before, I used to tell myself it was privacy. But after discovering the secret account, I was no longer sure. I tried hinting, "Why do you go to Seattle so often?" He gave a forced laugh. "Company project. You wouldn't understand." I looked into his eyes and caught a flicker of unease. In that moment I knew there was another truth waiting for me. I continued playing the perfect wife in front of his family. I still smiled when his mother bragged, "Colton is lucky to have a daughter-in-law who can handle everything." But inside I began collecting each shard of suspicion. His schedules, odd expenses, unfamiliar names, and company emails I happened to glimpse. Each detail cut deeper into the fragile trust. And deep down I realized, perhaps this marriage was never as solid as I once believed. I was no longer sure if the love back then was real, or a performance I had unknowingly stepped into. A week before Thanksgiving, my inbox pinged. I opened it and saw the familiar name, Elaine Davis. The subject line was short and rigid, like an order. "Thanksgiving arrangements, important." I clicked and a chill ran down my spine. The email wasn't an invitation to discuss or contribute. It was a detailed instruction sheet, listing every dish and timeline. 3 turkeys, 18 pounds each. 8 side dishes. 3 desserts. Even the list of wines suitable for the guests' taste. She ended with, "Deborah, I trust you'll make everything perfect as always. 2 o'clock sharp. Everyone is counting on you." I sat frozen, fingers tapping the keyboard without typing a word. That familiar feeling rose. Suffocating, bitter. Every year was the same, but this time the number broke me. 40 guests. Just me. I forwarded the email to Colton, adding only, "Did you see what your mother just sent?" He replied 5 minutes later, "Yeah, I saw. You're great at this. I know you'll handle it." I called him directly. "Colton, 40 people. Do you understand what that means? I'll have to start at 3 in the morning to get it done." On the other end, I heard the noise of a gym or bar. His voice calm. "Don't worry, this time I have a team-building retreat all week at the Aspen Resort. But I'll be back Wednesday night to help out." "Help out?" I repeated in disbelief. "You mean, carving the turkey like every year?" He gave a dry laugh. "Well, I'm not good at cooking. You do it better." I set the phone down, hollow inside. I had gotten used to handling everything alone, but never had I been put in such an absurd position. That afternoon, checking our joint account to budget for groceries, my eyes froze on a charge. A round-trip ticket from Denver to Seattle, departing the same day he claimed the Aspen retreat. I reread it again and again. No mistake. The joint card had been used and the passenger name was clear. Colton J. Davis. My hand trembled as I hovered over transaction details. The price wasn't cheap, but what shocked me wasn't the money. It was the audacity of the lie. That night when he came home, I tested him. "Is the Aspen team building mandatory?" He tossed his bag on a chair, poured a beer. "Of course. My department organized a big one, even the CEO is going." "Why?" I swallowed hard and asked directly. "I saw the flight ticket to Seattle. Same day you said Aspen. What's going on?" He froze for a split second. I caught the jolt in his eyes before he covered it with a forced smile. "Why are you checking the accounts?" "I booked it for a colleague. They'll reimburse me later." "Which colleague?" I pressed. "You don't know them. Relax, it's nothing." I heard my heart pounding in my chest. In his eyes, that lie came so easily, as if I were a child needing to be soothed. I forced a smile, didn't ask more, but inside a storm had begun to brew. The next day I sat at my desk and opened Elaine's email again. She emphasized, "You must make sure the pumpkin pie is with homemade crust, not store-bought. Sanders from the club is very particular." I suddenly thought maybe in her eyes I was never really a daughter-in-law, only a free high-end servant. And Colton, he letting me carry it all as if it were simply my duty. That evening as he was packing his suitcase, I walked over. "Could you postpone the trip? I can't handle this dinner all by myself." He zipped the suitcase without looking up. "Deborah, don't make a big deal out of it. My mom will help you somewhat." I laughed, a dry, bitter laugh. "Help? She sends me emails like orders and you call that help?" He sighed, looked at me with boredom. "You're always too sensitive. Everyone says you're good at this and yet you complain. Those words so familiar, like an old song on repeat. And in that moment I knew, this wasn't about one dinner anymore. This was the final limit they were testing me on. I wasn't an IT expert, but before switching to marketing, I had studied information security. Skills I thought I had forgotten suddenly became the lifeline I clung to in this suffocating doubt. That night, while Colton was in the shower, I sat at the laptop, hands trembling as I tried his passwords. He often used the same phrase, changing only a few numbers. First try, wrong. Second try, still wrong. On the third, when I added my own birthday at the end of the familiar string, his email opened. My heart pounded so loudly I thought he might hear it through the bathroom door. The inbox opened, hundreds of work emails stacked. I forced myself to stay calm and typed into the search bar a name I had never heard, but one my instinct whispered, Claire. The results appeared immediately. A string of emails between Colton and a woman named Claire Hamilton from a real estate company in Seattle. I clicked, my eyes scanning quickly. The account is still safe. She doesn't know a thing. Let Deborah handle the dinner. After the holiday, I'll fly over. They were talking about me. Not a colleague. Not a partner. The wife sitting here in the kitchen, palms sweating from the truth crashing into my heart. I scrolled through more emails. Dates stretched back months. They talked about hiding assets, about the house with the finished kitchen, about our home. The words were vague yet so clear they couldn't be denied. I stopped at one email with an attachment. My cursor shook as I clicked it open. The image made me drop the mouse. Colton. That familiar smile I once loved. His arm around a blonde woman with bright blue eyes. They stood in front of a house in Seattle, the evening sun casting a glow on their radiant faces. Beneath the photo, a short caption, Our home. I swayed, gripping the kitchen counter to keep from collapsing. Our home. Then what about the house I was living in, the dinners I slaved over, the nights I lay awake planning? What was I in this so-called home? Water still ran in the bathroom, steady and calm as if nothing had happened. I looked around the cluttered kitchen, ingredients piled up for a dinner for 40 people. Suddenly, it all felt meaningless. My phone buzzed. A text from Elaine. Remember to bake the cookies the day before so they'll cool in time, Deborah. Sanders likes them crisp. I laughed, but it broke into sobs. That entire family had grown used to dumping the weight on my shoulders, while the man I called my husband was building a home with another woman. The bathroom door opened and Colton walked out with a towel around his waist. He glanced at me and smiled. Making the shopping list again? I snapped the laptop shut, hiding the tremor in my hands. Yeah, still a lot to do. He stepped closer, kissed the top of my head. The smell of soap on him made me nauseous. I searched for a sign, anything, to prove what I had seen was wrong, a mistake. But there was only emptiness. I'm tired, I whispered, avoiding his gaze. I'll go upstairs. That night I tossed in bed, haunted by the photo. The house in it wasn't unfamiliar. I remembered seeing strange utility bills once, tucked in with papers he left behind with a Seattle address. Back then he said it was an office for a project. Now every scattered piece clicked into place, forming a picture that suffocated me. The next morning I waited until he left. I reopened the emails, reading more carefully. Claire called him Colt, a pet name I had never used. She sent photos of furniture, a new sofa, wooden bookshelves, even a navy blue bedding set. He replied, looks perfect. Can't wait to be back. I closed my eyes, feeling like someone had squeezed the air out of my lungs. I didn't know what hurt more, his lies or the fact that I had lived in delusion for so long. My phone rang. It was Colton. I'll be home late. There's a prep meeting for the resort tonight. I heard his voice, but it was like a stranger playing my husband's role. I answered softly. Okay. Work well. My hand gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. I looked around the kitchen, once the stage where I performed as the perfect wife. And in that instant I knew I couldn't pretend anymore. That night, after he fell asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen. The laptop still glowed, casting light on the blank sheet in front of me. I picked up a pen, writing each word slowly as if carving the decision into my own heart. Elaine, dinner is yours this year. Colton, you'll be hearing from someone else soon. I folded the paper neatly, placed it on the dining table. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an explanation. It was a declaration. I was no longer the silent wife carrying it all. Within 15 minutes, I opened the booking app, chose the earliest flight to Seattle the next morning. My finger pressed confirm, my heart pounding as if I had crossed a point of no return. When the plane landed in Seattle, drizzle blanketed the gray sky. I pulled my small suitcase out of the airport, feeling like I had stepped into a strange world, yet oddly calm. I wasn't here to rest. I was here for the truth. The hotel I chose was on a small street in Capitol Hill. The room was simple, a bed with crisp white sheets, a window overlooking rain-soaked trees. I set down my suitcase, didn't pause to rest, and opened my phone. In my old contacts, I found the number. A college friend had once introduced me to a private investigator here. His name was Martin Keene, a former cop now handling complicated family cases. I called. A husky, steady male voice answered. "This is Martin. Who needs help?" "My name is Deborah Lewis. I need to know about a woman named Claire Hamilton, and about my husband's connection to her." He replied, "I'll need to meet you in person. Where's your hotel?" That afternoon we met in a small cafe. Martin was in his 50s, solid build, eyes that seemed to read thoughts. He set his notebook on the table, listening as I laid out everything I had discovered. The emails, the photo, the hidden flight. He nodded slowly. "You've got good instincts. The woman, Claire Hamilton, is well known in Seattle's real estate circles. I've heard of her. I'll dig deeper. But let me ask, what do you want the truth for? Divorce? Or something more?" I gripped the hot coffee cup tightly. I want the truth. And I want to prove he never had the right to treat me like a shadow. Martin looked at me for a long moment, then scribbled a few notes. "All right. I'll start with the property records. If he has a house here, there will be a trace." In the days that followed, I lived like someone in hiding. By day, I wandered the rain-soaked streets, eyes searching for anything that might connect to Claire. By night, I lay on the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling and replaying every lie he had spoken. On the third day, Martin called me. "I have a few things you need to see." We met at his small office on the second floor of an old building. He spread out a stack of papers before me. A home purchase contract in Queen Anne under the name of Claire Hamilton, co-owned with Colton Davis. The signing date was more than 2 years ago. 2 years. Which meant that during the very time I was breaking my back preparing family dinners, he had been building our home with another woman. Martin continued, "This isn't all. I also found several bank transfers from Colton's account to Claire's. Over $60,000 in the past year." My hands clutched the edge of the table, my heart racing. While I had to count every penny for groceries, he was funneling money into another life. "Can you look into Claire's work?" I asked, my voice hoarse. "I want to know exactly what they're doing with that money." Martin nodded. "You'll have the information soon. But Deborah, you need to be prepared. The truth is rarely easy to swallow." That evening, back in my hotel room, I opened my laptop and reread Colton's emails. This time I paid attention to the small details I had overlooked before. In one, Claire wrote, "Best not to make her suspicious. Let her keep handling the dinner. The busier she is, the less time she has to ask questions." I collapsed onto the bed, eyes blurring. That her was me. They had calculated every step, turning me into the perfect cover so Colton could live 2 lives. My phone lit up suddenly. A text from Colton. "I miss you. Everything okay? Mom says you're doing great with the prep. I'll be back before Wednesday night." I stared at the words, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. While he pretended to be carrying in text a few miles away, the lights were shining in that so-called our home. I didn't reply. The next day, Martin called again. "Deborah, I spoke to someone in the industry. Claire and Colton don't have a house. They also co-own a shell company that flips properties. Those transfers were the capital. Everything aligned. The sudden business trips. The hidden bank account. The house in Seattle. None of it was coincidence. I need to meet Claire," I said. "I want to hear it from her own mouth." Martin hesitated. "Deborah, are you sure? Meeting her could be dangerous, or at the very least, very painful." I met his eyes, my voice steady. "I've lived in pain long enough. Now I need the truth." Martin arranged for us to meet at a cafe by Green Lake, where he said Claire often stopped in the mornings. I arrived early, carrying one thing in my bag. A framed wedding photo of me and Colton, large and silver-edged. My heart thudded as I imagined facing a woman I had never met, yet who shared the same man, the man I had called my husband. The cafe door opened and a blonde woman stepped in. She wore a beige knit coat, her face beautiful but tired, deep blue eyes shadowed by dark circles. Martin signaled to me. I walked toward her, my voice trembling. "Are you Claire Hamilton?" She froze briefly, eyes cautious. "I'm Claire. Who are you?" I pulled the photo from my bag and placed it on the table. In it, Colton and I smiled brightly under a floral arch, hand in hand. The light from the cafe window glinted off the wedding ring on my finger. Claire stared at the photo, her lips quivering. Tears spilled suddenly, unstoppable. "Oh God," she whispered, he really did this." I sat across from her, my hands clenched together to keep steady. "I need you to be clear. What's going on?" Claire dabbed her tears with a napkin, her shoulders still shaking. "I never signed any divorce papers. Colton and we married 12 years ago at the Seattle courthouse. We once filed for a temporary separation, then I received divorce papers in the mail, stamped finalized. I thought he wanted to end things, but at least I believed it was real." My throat tightened. "But I have a legal marriage certificate with him." Claire looked at me, confusion and pain in her eyes. "He forged my signature. And maybe falsified the paperwork he sent you. Legally, I'm still his wife." The words hit me like a hammer. I hissed through my teeth. "Which means he's been living 2 lives. One here with you. One in Colorado with me." Claire nodded, tears falling hard. "And I think the reason he did it was money. I don't have much wealth. But I know you." She hesitated. "You come from a family with assets, don't you?" I froze. My heart twisted as I remembered my father's inheritance. A modest investment fund, but enough to keep me independent. When I married Colton, I believed he was honest, so I never doubted. Turns out that was what he had targeted all along. I looked straight at Claire. "He poured my money into the business you two shared?" All I knew was the joint account for property deals. I thought it was his capital. I never knew where it came from. I gave a bitter laugh. "So the dinners for 40, the sleepless nights I carried. A smokescreen while he kept fooling us both." Claire clenched the napkin, eyes red. "I suspected. But I wanted to believe that he was really busy with work." In the cafe, filled with the hum of grinders and chatter, she and I sat like 2 lonely islands, battered by the same storm. I took a deep breath, steadying my voice. "We can't let him continue. I need proof. Do you have anything?" Claire's eyes flickered with determination. "Yes. I kept the house contract. And I have a copy of the divorce file I never signed. The signature is fake. I can prove it." I leaned forward, feeling strength surge in my chest. "Then we can overturn everything. Not the marriage, but the assets too. I'll help. I can't let him trample both our lives like this." We weren't enemies as he had hoped. We were 2 victims. And now maybe even allies. I pulled out my phone, turned to Martin, who had been quietly watching nearby. "Do we have enough to start?" He nodded slowly. "Not enough for court yet, but enough to make Colton shake. And I promise you, Deborah, this is only the beginning." When Claire and I left the cafe that afternoon, the Seattle rain had stopped. The wet street reflected the streetlights in long streaks, like a warped mirror of our lives. 2 women bound by the same betrayal, now clasping hands to prepare for a counterattack. Martin brought us back to his small office. The room was simple, shelves packed with files, an old wooden desk and a scanner in the corner. He pulled a fresh stack of blank forms from a cabinet and set them down hard on the desk. "If you want to go all the way, the first step is to hire a divorce attorney. You both need to protect your legal rights before Colton has a chance to cover his tracks." Claire nodded, her eyes dry after the tears. I once thought I wasn't strong enough to face the truth. But now, Colton's lies had become the very fuel that kept me from trembling. The next day, we went to the office of attorney Linda Chavez, a Mexican-American woman in her 40s, known in Seattle for handling complicated divorce cases. She listened carefully as we explained, her eyes sharp but her voice calm and steady. "You have more than I expected," Linda said after reviewing the photos, emails, and house contract. "Especially the copy of the divorce file without a real signature. That is clear evidence of forgery." I opened my bag and pulled out another file Martin had uncovered that morning. "And this? A loan contract for land in Montana signed under my name, but I never signed it." Linda picked it up, studied the signature closely. Her eyebrows lifted. This is the hardest hit. If Colton used your name to take out a loan, that means he committed forgery and financial fraud. This isn't a marriage issue. It could trigger a criminal investigation. Claire gripped my hand beneath the table. I turned and saw her eyes filled with both fear and relief. We had found Colton's fatal weakness. Linda stacked the files neatly, her voice firm. I'll notarize this immediately and file it with the court. But to strengthen the case, you'll need living evidence. A recording, a witness, or any document directly from his hand. Martin interjected. I can set up legal monitoring, track upcoming transactions. With someone like Colton, he won't stop. And that's when we'll catch more proof. In the following week, Claire and I lived like two allies in the shadows. By day, we met with lawyers, notarized every page, noted every detail. By night, we sat in front of the screen, combing through hundreds of emails Martin had hacked. Each time I saw the phrase, "she still doesn't know," my chest twisted tighter, but so did my resolve not to let those words remain true forever. One night, Claire placed a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Deborah, I thought you would hate me. But now I see he deceived us both." I looked at her and gave a sad smile. We're not enemies. We're each other's witnesses. In that moment, I knew we had formed an alliance Colton would never anticipate. The final date came at last. Colton's family hosted a grand dinner in Denver, calling it a make-up meal after the canceled Thanksgiving. Elaine texted me, both scolding and boasting, "I hope this time you don't disappear, Deborah. The whole family is waiting." I didn't reply. Instead, I signed the last document Linda prepared, an official summons from the court. The plan was precise. We wouldn't storm into their house, we wouldn't scream at the door. We would let the law do its work, but at the moment that would shame Colton the most. That evening, I stood in the shadows of the hotel lobby where the dinner was held. The tall glass windows reflected the warm golden lights inside, laughter echoing. I saw Colton in a blue suit, smiling broadly, glass raised, about to step up to the podium. Elaine sat at the front table, regal as though she were a queen. My heart pounded, but the stack of papers in my coat pocket steadied me. Claire stayed beside me, her face unervingly calm. Martin nodded at us, then signaled to the woman in court uniform. The microphone crackled as Colton began. "I am so proud." The doors burst open. The woman strode straight to the podium, her voice loud and clear. "Mr. Colton Davis, you have been served." The entire room froze. Colton gaped, his hand shaking as red wine spilled down his sleeve. Elaine shot to her feet, her voice breaking. "What is this?" I walked in slowly, eyes fixed on Colton. His face was pale, stripped of all confidence. I stopped a few steps away and pulled from my pocket the photo of our home, placing it on the table before Elaine. "This house," I said clearly, "doesn't belong only to you and your son. And that Montana loan signature isn't mine." A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. The process server placed the thick summons into Colton's trembling hand. He stammered, "This is a mistake." Claire stepped forward, laying down the unsigned divorce file copy. Her voice was calm but firm. "There's no mistake. I'm still the legal wife. And he deceived us both." Every eye turned toward Colton. I saw stunned faces among his relatives, whispers spreading, "2 wives. Forgery. Oh my God." Elaine tried to rally, her voice shaking. "Deborah, you're shaming this family." I turned, a faint smile on my lips. "No. This family shamed itself when it allowed lies to thrive." The chandeliers sparkled, but Colton's face was swallowed in shadow. I stepped into the glittering ballroom, the music faltering as all eyes fell on me. My simple white dress hugged my frame, not as glamorous as the other women, but its plainness made me stand out. I wore little makeup, only lipstick, letting my calm expression show. In my hand was the thick file, the court summons clipped neatly on top. I heard the faint clink of a glass set down, someone swallowing hard. Elaine sat in the front row, dressed in emerald silk, hair styled perfectly. She stared at me, eyes wide with disbelief. Colton stood at the podium, microphone in hand, his smile frozen like a cracked mask. I walked forward, my heels tapping slowly on the tiled floor, each step echoing like a hammer in the tense air. I didn't shout, didn't shake, didn't hide. I stopped in the center of the hall, my voice calm and steady. "This is the truth everyone deserves to know." I raised the file high. The red court seal gleamed. Behind me, attorney Linda stepped forward with the process server. Her voice rang sharp and decisive. Mr. Colton Davis, you are being served. The room erupted. Elaine shot to her feet, then collapsed into her chair, her hand trembling on the table edge. Relatives rushed to her side, but her eyes never left the papers in my hand. Colton tried to smile, his voice faltering, strained to sound gentle. This must be a misunderstanding. Deborah, you're overreacting. I pulled out the photo of Claire and Colton smiling in front of the Seattle house, the words, "Our home," scrawled in the corner. I held it high for all to see. Murmurs surged. A misunderstanding? I asked slowly. Then what about the forged divorce, the Montana loan under my name, the emails you wrote to Claire? Colton's mouth hung open, scrambling for words. Elaine cried out hoarsely, No, this can't be." Linda cut the silence sharply. She dropped another set of files onto the table before Colton. "Here is the loan contract with your wife's forged signature. Here is proof of misused inheritance funds. And here is the statement of Claire Davis, who never signed a divorce." Gasps echoed. Relatives and friends exchanged looks, whispers rising. The room split in two, some watching me, some avoiding my gaze. Colton swallowed hard, set the microphone down, stepped toward me. His voice dropped, trying to whisper. "What do you want? Money? You can have it all. Don't do this here in front of them. I don't want your money. I want the truth. And I want everyone here to know I am no longer this family's tool." I turned to Elaine, pale and speechless. "You once said I was lucky to enter the Davis family. But in truth it was your family that erased me, turning me into nothing more than a servant. For 5 years I cooked, hosted, cleaned, gave up my career. For what? A double-faced husband and a mother-in-law who treated me like help." Elaine tried to speak, but her voice broke. "Deborah, you don't understand." I cut her off. "No, you're the one who doesn't understand. I've been silent for too long." I placed the copy of the forged divorce papers on the table, right in front of them. Claire stepped out from behind, her hair tied back, her eyes calm. She moved to stand beside me, laying her hand on the stack of files as if to confirm it. Another shock rippled through the room. Colton turned pale, his voice cracking. "Claire?" Claire looked at him, her voice soft but clear. "Because the truth always finds a way to surface, Colton. You forgot no one can hide two lives forever." Whispers, the click of phone cameras, a few people recording the moment. I saw Colton raise his hand to stop them, but every move of his was meaningless now. I turned, addressing the entire room. Every year I cooked for dozens of people. I endured silently, thinking it was my duty. But tonight I bring the truth. And truth is the only dish this family must swallow whole. Elaine gasped, as if every word I spoke cut into her chest. Colton stepped back, stripped of all confidence. Attorney Linda stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder, her voice steady. "From this moment, Colton Davis is officially entering legal proceedings. Any explanation should be saved for the court." I drew in a deep breath. Under the blazing lights, surrounded by wide eyes, for the first time in years I didn't feel small. March came. The Montana sky was crystal blue, the distant mountains still dusted with late-season snow, while the valley sprouted fresh grass. I stepped onto the land. Not through forged signatures, not through empty promises, but through the rights I had fought to reclaim. A small wooden cabin stood in the field, its windows facing a sunlit stream. I had turned it into a book cafe, the very dream I once folded away when I moved to Colorado to settle with Colton. On opening day, I brewed the first cappuccinos with my own hands, set out trays of fragrant cookies. The shelves were lined with books, most of them second-hand finds from shops in Denver and Seattle. When customers came in, the small bell chimed softly, a sound so different from the shouting and orders I endured for years. Here no one told me what I must do. Next door, a plant shop opened, rows of lush greenery under the porch. Claire was wiping the leaves of a big monstera, her face radiant in the sunlight. Once we had been two women betrayed. Now we were neighbors, friends, and living proof of rebirth. One afternoon, Claire walked over with a bouquet of lavender in her hands. "Put this right by the entrance, Deborah. Customers will remember the scent." I took it, smiling. "Thank you. I never thought I'd find a friend from the same tragedy." Claire nodded softly. In truth, Colton brought us together. He lost everything and we found ourselves again. We looked at each other and laughed, light and free. One early summer morning, I saw a familiar pickup truck stop in front of the cafe. Out stepped Vivian, my sister. She wore an old denim jacket, her hair tied high, her eyes still a little wary as always. I ran out and hugged her tight. "You drove 10 hours to visit me?" I asked, voice trembling. "That's right." Vivian smiled, tired but bright. "I needed to see with my own eyes where you rebuilt your life." We sat by the cafe window, sipping hot coffee, watching sparrows dart across the field. Vivian looked around, shaking her head in admiration. "You did what I never dared. Leave before they erased you. You don't need anyone to give you worth. You've had it all along. You just need to take one step forward." Vivian's eyes welled. She whispered, "Seeing you gives me hope for myself." That afternoon, the cafe was busier than usual. A family stopped by after camping. Young friends came to read, the elderly neighbor bought a cup of hot tea. I was busy but at peace. In every smile, every greeting, I felt clearly that this place was more than a cafe. It was a rebirth. A place where no one raised their voice at me, where my words were heard, where I could finally live fully as myself. Montana, with its mountains, streams, and fresh winds, became proof that a new life can begin at any time, if you're brave enough to leave the place that once erased you. A year later, when winter returned, Montana was blanketed in thick snow. I sat in the small cabin, the fireplace crackling, firelight glowing on familiar faces. 6 of us gathered around the wooden table. Me, Claire, Vivian, the elderly neighbor, and a young couple who had opened a bakery nearby. No one had to pretend to be the perfect host. We roasted chicken together, someone brought pumpkin pie, another brought wine. No orders, no comparisons, laughter filling the warm air. "Deborah, the chicken's fantastic." The old neighbor chuckled, dropping another piece on my plate. "I only put it in the oven." "The group did the rest," I replied, and the whole table burst out laughing. Claire poured more wine, her voice soft with relief. "A year ago, if anyone said we'd be at this table together, I wouldn't have believed it. Yet here we are, and it feels natural." I looked around, my heart warm in a way I'd never known. No longer was I scrambling to lay out a feast for 40. No longer was Colton watching from the sidelines as if my labor was owed. Now everyone contributed and my worth was no longer tied to service. The phone chimed. I opened my inbox and saw Linda's email. The words were brief but enough to still me. "The court has ruled. Colton Davis is convicted of forgery and fraud. Elaine has been forced to sell the Denver house to cover part of the damages." I set the phone down, inhaled deeply. It wasn't the joy of revenge, it was closure. What I had lost could never be replaced, but at least the truth had been named. Vivian sat beside me, her hand on my shoulder, whispering, "I always thought you'd stay trapped. But today, seeing you, I believe people can break free and live true to themselves." I turned, squeezed her hand gently. "You can too, Vivian. Everyone deserves a life that doesn't require permission." Outside, the snow fell heavier. Through the window, I saw the forest blanketed white, silent but not cold. Inside, laughter rang out, silverware clinked, the scent of roast chicken and pumpkin pie filled the air. I raised my glass, my voice soft but firm. "This Thanksgiving has no grand feast, no 40 guests and finery. Only me, whole, no longer disappearing to please others. And that is enough." Glasses clinked, smiles spread. I looked into the fire, and the woman reflected back was no longer a shadow. She was me, clear, full, and enough for my own life. What do you think of this journey? Have you ever felt like you were turned into a tool in your own family the way I once was? Or have you had a moment when you dared to step out and reclaim your voice? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might give someone else the courage they need to change. If you resonated with this journey, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. I have many more stories to share about family, love, betrayal, and the strength to rise again. Each story is not just for reflection, but to remind us all, no matter how much the world tries to shrink us, we still have the right to live fully, completely, and without asking anyone's permission.